Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest here today. We have Greg Mohr, the franchise maven. Greg, I was sitting here thinking about it, and if we have an individual who's working a full-time job, been in the job for 10 years, wants to go off and start a franchise, but they don't have the funds, would that even be possible?
Jordan, that's a question that people don't always ask me right away. Very interesting in that with franchising, getting funding for a franchise is actually very easy. A lot of people think, I want to go down to my local bank and do it. And that's just not always the case because local banks are very, you might have a good relationship with them. They might do it, but they're really picky about what they invest in. I have
Yeah.
a few groups of people that specifically do funding for franchising. So funding for franchising is actually very simple for even for a new business like that. As long as you've got some decent credit on your end, then the franchise already has that proven model of success. And my funding people, the people they work with, they know those franchises have that proven model of success. And that's what a lot of the business funding people are looking at. They'll be looking at that business, how well it's doing. So when you go into a private business and you want to fund something like that, they're going to be looking at the past records of that private business. It might be a little bit more challenging to get funding for something like that. Whereas for a franchise, that model of success is already there on that. So
Wow.
as long as you've got good credit, I've got funding people, you can go SBA loans, you can do other kinds of loans. I've got a couple different people that we can talk to for, rollover for businesses, using your 401k money, using your IRA money, all sorts of different options for people out there that they're not necessarily aware of when they're mostly dealing with their local banks.
Yeah, and this is why you're the guy. This is why you're the maven. So, Greg, where did your journey begin with all of this? How did you grow up, and then how did you even get exposed to franchising? Because it's a unique area. It's not something that most people go after.
It's true. My first foray into franchising was actually back in my high school days. Back in the late '70s when I was in high school, kind of dating myself there. Most everybody got into, their first jobs was fast food. It was just a really simple, easy place to go. You made some money, so you can go out and party on Friday and Saturday nights. Simple as that. I got into Taco Bell, and I moved up in the Taco Bell world after a while there, and started managing some restaurants. And I didn't even know it at the time, but I was actually working for a master franchisor who she had about 50 restaurants throughout the Woodland, California, Davis, Sacramento, California area. And I started managing her restaurants. That was my first foray into franchising. And I thought it was great because when I was managing her restaurants, I was helping her build up the sales and build up the teams on many of her different restaurants. And I could go into any one I wanted to, and it was always exactly the same process and procedures, very simple to operate it. So you weren't, wondering, okay, now what am I going to do here? That was my first foray into it. I moved up into managing other restaurants. I finally got bored with that, got a degree in
Well,
electrical engineering and physics, moved
yeah,
on from
no, no,
that.
no, absolutely. I just want to hop
Yeah,
into that point right there where you brought up that with inside of franchising, it's already got the playbook for you. It's already set up for success because a lot of times when people start businesses, it's blank slate, no, no idea. And you're just like, all right, we're gonna hop in. But a franchise, they have the backing, they've done it before, and they show you how to make it successful. So I just wanted to jump right in, but you keep going with your story. Yeah.
yeah, that is very, very true. So I found out later how important that was. While I was after I became a manager and I got into engineering. Uh, one of my fellow engineers and myself, we bought a dry cleaners, privately owned dry cleaners. We ran that, attempted to. He got a lot better at it than I did after a while, but we ran that one. That was like we had no clue as to what to do. So we had to go out and find out for ourselves. How do you run a dry cleaners with drop-off locations? We bought some storage units, bought some rental properties, and we ran those together. And it was like, we're on our own. Fortunately, we had each other and we kind of helped each other out. But after I got out of the corporate world, that's when I thought, that franchising thing was really good. I don't have the latest, greatest idea, so I need to go out and find a franchise to get into because, I tried that private business thing and it was, I go out and buy one, but it was a real challenge doing everything, you're completely on your own, nobody there to help you. There's good and bad points about it. Don't get me wrong. Some people are best with going to a privately owned business. Franchising isn't for everybody, but I decided I wanted to get into franchising. So I went click happy and all over the place, clicking on all sorts of different franchise opportunities. I got franchise development people calling me all over the place, very confusing. And finally, I got a hold of a franchise consultant, never knew they existed. And he said, okay, put everything on hold. Let's take a look at what your goals are, what your aspirations are, where have you been, where are you at now, where you want to be, and let's narrow that down. With his help, I got into a franchise and then ran that one for a while. That
And
was wonderful, good franchise. And then I decided that this is such a good thing. I wanted to help other people do it. I liked what he did. So I told him, show me what you do. Teach me what you do. That was about 10 years ago. And I have not looked back since. And it's just been a whole lot of fun.
that's incredible. And when I think about it, because we're heading into 2024, the new year's starting off in a couple weeks, literally next week, actually. And the thing is, a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about buying businesses up because there's people who are getting older and there's different opportunities. What was the thought process when you bought that? Like, I want to take you back to that point where you bought the laundromat. Were you working a full-time job and then you tried doing the laundromat on the side? Like, how did that work? Because I know a lot of the audience is sitting there right now going, this guy's done it 100 times. Like, how could I do that? I'm just working my job and I'm trying to figure out what side hustle to jump into. So,
It's, a good question, Jordan. That's what I did was actually when I was an engineer, working for that, I was also getting my master's degree in business. And I read
oh wow.
I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So while I
Yeah.
was getting my master's, I read that book, and that pretty much ruined the corporate career. And I thought, there's got to be something better out here. So a friend of mine, even a fellow engineer, we were just talking once, and we just said, let's get into a business together because we got to have something on the side because people are getting laid off all the time in our business, in
Yeah.
the microelectronic circuit in the semiconductor industry quite a bit.
Well,
So we got into
that
that. He just found that somebody that he knew was selling the business. So we thought, hey, we're engineers. We know how to do everything. We can do anything. So let's get into this business. Dry cleaning can't be that bad. You just clean the clothes, right? So
exactly.
yeah.
And
So we did
the,
that, and we uh, we learned a lot by ourselves along the way on that one. But we bought in that one. We did it on the side. We were running our day jobs, doing that. So with a private owned business, having to do it all yourself and not knowing exactly what's going on, there was a little bit, I would say, a lot of extra work going in there. So there were times during lunch that I'd take off and go check on the dry cleaners and go stop by the drop off locations, make sure everybody was doing good and everybody was okay. Keeping in touch with my employees. And then after work, I might stop by there and see what's going on, help them out, greet some of the customers occasionally as well, just to let them know that I was the one doing it. My partner was doing it as well, but it was something that we could do on the side. We were probably putting in another 15 hours or so on
yeah.
top of our day jobs. On top of that, so it wasn't too terribly time consuming on that one. Just a little bit of a stress, not knowing where to turn necessarily when things were wrong, like machine breaks down or something goes wrong. It's like, all right, now where are we going to find the parts? Who do we go look for? Where do we find this? What do we do here? So that's why I like the franchising, because when I got into the franchising world, all those questions you got answers to because the franchisor was right there to answer them and the other franchisees that you made friends with. But between the two of us, yeah, we ran those drop off locations, had some storage units as well, had to figure out how to do those on the side. But it was something you could do on the side, and it was something that was long term. And my buddy Robbie, he took them over after we both left the corporate world, and he ran with it. And I said, no more private businesses for me. I'm going to go do that franchising thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating because I think you brought up a really good point about how you were working a job, scary market, needs supplemental income. Because we all sit here and we're like, oh, a job's so safe. But a job's just one income source for one activity. If you don't have other activities, it becomes a scary place where it's like you could get laid off and then things could go sideways. And people don't realize that. Um, yeah, because it happens so often. It happens all the time. And with you, when you considered that, let me explore the franchising world, it kind of made me think about it because you're like, oh, there's a lot of mistakes people make. It's the same thing when people buy a house for the first time or real estate. They're like, who's the plumber? Who's the this guy? Who's the that guy? Who's the electrician? Who's the this? You build out your teams eventually, but if there's a pre-built team, it makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, it definitely was a whole lot easier doing the franchising world and getting into the franchising thing as opposed to doing it yourself. And the job, you're correct. I mean, we had people getting laid off constantly over there at the semiconductor industry, and that's actually why me and Robbie left, because we both finally got laid off on that
Yeah.
one. I think one of the managers finally realized what I'd realized a while ago, is that my heart just wasn't into the job anymore.
Yeah.
Going from 7 to 5 every day, that was
It's a
getting
lot of
old.
hours.
Yeah, yeah, I did restaurant management for 15 years, and 50, 60 hour work weeks were normal. And then I did the semiconductor business for 15 years, and they wanted you, at your desk at 7 a.m. and they wanted you at your desk until 5 p.m. And that's Monday through Friday. And then I had a team over in China that I was working with, so I'd work some hours in the evenings. And after a while, you start thinking, there's got to be something better out there. That's getting old. And after reading Robert Kiyosaki's books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I realized I was. Corporate career got ruined. Manager said, "You're gone." Robbie was gone. Robbie took over the all of our other businesses for us, and I said, "I'm going to go in another route." And that franchising, it was just the guy that I first started with, Dennis Schooley for Schooley Mitchell Telecommunications Consulting. He set the stage for what franchising was all about. He had
Yeah.
all the training down completely on that. 100 different ways to get clients, who to talk to, how to talk to them. He had people that will go and make phone calls for you to set up appointments for you, so you didn't necessarily have to do that part.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, everything was just right there in place. So, and then in addition to that, as I was investigating the franchise, I talked to all those other franchisees. So I had those people as friends, as partners that would help me grow as well. So I could call upon them if I had any questions. We got a phone caller. How's the phone callers working for you guys? Do you have a specific one that you like to do? So all of that stuff was there, just like with the dry cleaning. If you need to fix something or do something, we didn't know. But if you went into a franchise dry cleaning, well, that's easy enough. You call the franchisor or call one of the other franchisees. Hey, who are you using for this in that area? Where do you find people to hire? Where do you do this? What do you do that? All was right there, and always have an answer immediately.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that community, but it's also an ease of access
Correct.
because majority of the time as a business owner by yourself, you're like, I'm on an island. Who can I trust? Because you're not going to go to your employees and say, hey, I have no idea.
That would be, this is true. And yeah, you have a whole team, you have a whole tribe of people that are helping you grow on that, because most franchises, probably about 98, 99% of them have territories that are just for you, that no other franchisee can come into. So you're never competing with any other franchisee. So everybody's helping to grow the name and the business and build that up together as a team. Great team camaraderie on that one, if I can say that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've known a few people who did School Mitchell because it's an interesting area to be in and it's an interesting space. And there's a lot of it comes down to that monthly like recurring revenue when you start looking at the different finances and how the models work because you know this and I think it's an interesting thing for the audience to realize is that there's a lot of businesses that run differently. Like for example, a dry cleaner. Let's use that for the model you talked about before. People will come and they'll go. And as long as you do good work, they should return theoretically. But they still have to do the activity. Like with the telephones, I'd imagine the retention on when you get someone using their telephones, they're not going to switch too often. So there's just some businesses that have better models. Did you find this as
Yeah,
well?
true. That's very true on that. The telecommunication consulting is what Dennis Schooley Mitchell started off with back when I was doing it about 10 years ago. And when you're thinking, oh, so you can help me save a few dollars on my phone bill. Well, you got to think about the fact that businesses like automotive dealership, think of all the phones and all the extensions there. Those are huge business lines, and those businesses are not going to think about their phone lines or their transportation costs or their paper costs. So it's more a cost reduction type franchise. So you take over as the person that is going to be doing that for them on that. So you give them the same or better service, or find them the same or better service for a lower price, and you share um, in that cost savings for them. And then you are their trusted partner. You're their phone guy or phone girl, as the case may be, or their transportation person on that one. So it's a great business model, and there are different types of business models out there in franchising. Pretty much franchising in the industry you can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other cool thing about it is that once you become that person, they can depend on you for other things where you can refer things out or refer people in. It it becomes a win-win environment when you're working with good people. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right, Jordan. You're their trusted person. Everybody likes to have someone that they can trust that'll make their life easier. It'll make their business operations easier, make things run smoother. So they have, as the owner of the business, they're one less thing for them to have to worry about, and they love it.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's so many different things as a business owner. So, what were the major differences that you found between being the business owner and then being the franchisee later on?
Being a franchisee, I really like being part of the team and being part of a tribe of people that will help you out. We got together once a year on that and had
Oh,
group meetings
cool.
on that. Most franchises will do that. They'll put all the franchisees in a room, and they'll go for anywhere from a couple days to a week, or they're going to go over what's happening in the industry, what's happening with that franchise, how they're going to grow, what's next, what's coming up next year, how to grow the business. Or with the doing it all by yourself, you're just there by yourself. You have to think about what am I going to do next? You have to investigate where the industry is going. Uh, what are the trends in the industry on that one? Do we need, are people going to continue to come to my location, or do I need to set up drop off locations, even more places, different types? So you have to think of all those things all by yourself, or you hire other people to help you do that and try and find the ones that are good for you, which is a challenge. But with a franchise system, just having that whole team of people and getting together on a regular basis, always collaborating with them on where do we see this going? You guys having problems? You girls having problems with this? What are you doing for cost savings on this one? It's great just having a whole team of people, being part of a group and having people that are going to help you build up that business and grow. It's a really a good feeling. Feels a lot more comfortable, a lot
Yeah,
more secure when you know that you've got a lot of people that are doing exactly the same thing you're doing, trying to grow the business exactly the same as you are, and you can count on them and they can count on you to help them build that business.
absolutely. And with Edwards Consulting, we have five pillars. It's mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. And that relationship pillar is usually overlooked because when you're just working a job, everyone's like, my job is my family. I know all of these corporations want to do that, and that's fine. But when you're really a partner in the business, you see that more side by side because you're making the money, but you're also working together, but you're also building the team and you're seeing the true impact of what's coming out there. Also, you mentioned a few times that your work-life balance kind of increased or got better with the franchising model. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, Jordan. So, yeah, when you're working in the corporate world, they want you there. Like I was indicated, they wanted you there at a certain hour. So, with the manufacturing facility in the semiconductor industry, it was 24 hours. You had to keep that going. So they weren't really concerned too much about, your work life or anything like that. They wanted you there. They wanted you producing. They wanted the output of that manufacturing plant to increase, better yields, all that good stuff. So even if I could do the work at home, which I could a lot, if I wasn't sitting at that desk at 7 and until 5, you got dinged. It wasn't a good thing. And so you would probably get a lesser review if you weren't at
Yeah.
your desk at that. So, and then also in the corporate world, what you ran into is that and you were in a different like engineering tiers. So you had a max on the amount of money that you could make within that
Yeah.
tier until you moved on to the next one. Now, back to the franchising life, especially with what I do. If I went to as a telecommunications consultant person and as a franchise consulting person, if I want to make more money, I just simply put in more hours,
Yeah.
or I work smarter, or I have other people help me do some things that I don't want to do. If I don't want to make as much money, I work less hours. It's
Yeah.
entirely up to me as far as what I want to do and how much I want to make. And that's with the franchising world. When you get into other businesses, we have employees. You never want that business to revolve around you, because one day you may want to sell it. So it's easier to sell if that business doesn't revolve around you. So we have many semi-absentee franchises where you don't have to do it full time at all. You can do it semi-passive, semi-absentee, and then some franchises prefer that you go in there and you do it full time. However, They don't, even the full-time ones don't necessarily want you in that office or in that retail establishment or whatever it is all the time. They want you working on the business, building that business up, not in it. So you've got time throughout the day now to do whatever you want. A lot of it's going to be building the business yourself, working on it, meeting and greeting, shaking hands, kissing babies, all that good stuff to let people know that you're the one that's out there running it. You're the local business owner. But I found that now I have more time to do what I want because I don't have somebody breathing, down my neck, over my shoulder or whatever, that it says, you have to be at this spot and you have to be at during this hours during the day. I can work whatever hours I want. Same thing with most any franchise that you get into. You get to work whatever hours you want, as long as that business runs and operates well and you're keeping it up, then you can come and go as you please. So now you've got time, and I've got time to do what I want throughout the day as well. Some of those things you don't necessarily like doing yourself, you have other employees do it. Don't want to do the marketing, you hire a marketing person. That's what I do. On that one, you don't want to do your website, you hire a website person. That's what I do. Less time that I spend on the business. I put people that know what they're doing, that are experts in those fields, doing that for me. So now I get to spend the time doing the things that I enjoy best, which is talking with clients. That's where I'm best at. That's what I like doing. And I don't have to do it for 8 to 10 hours a day to still make a really great living. And neither will any of you in the franchising world, because you'll have other people doing that for you. So now you want to go out there and do your things with your kids. You want to do things with your family. Now you've got the time to do that because you've got a whole other team of people that are running that business or working in that business for you. And you just work on it, putting everybody in the right direction and keep them going down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony Robbins talks about it a lot, where it's working in the business versus on the business. And as a business owner, many people struggle with that transition because at first you're just trying to build enough to have a job, like you're trying to build enough to have enough income. So to do that franchise, you're skipping steps, but it's already been established. So it helps you along the way. And I think that's so powerful that it's on the business, not in the business, because the transition's got to be significantly easier on the individuals. Because most people, it can be overwhelming. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, and to take it on the first time, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. How does this work? Um, so how has that experience been with you seeing clients go through that process?
It's been great. The clients I work with have just been wonderful. They see it. Now, keep in mind, franchising is not for everybody, and I'm not going to push it on franchising that, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. For some people, it's not, and that's just fine. But for the ones that it is, they have really seen the light. They just really love what the franchise does to help them get the people to do that. Now, some of the businesses are going to be pretty simple. You have, skilled employees, non-skilled employees. The non-skilled employees, a little bit easier to get them. You go through them a lot quicker. But what my people really liked was when they got into the businesses, the franchise businesses with skilled employees, they liked how that franchisor would help them find those people. They wouldn't necessarily expect them to go out there and know how to do it themselves on that. So they help them get those people that'll run that business, work in that business for them. And when the ones that have the retail establishments, those were just, they really enjoyed that because a lot of my people have been, like investors in the past where they had to go out and find their real estate investors had to go out and find real estate properties themselves and had to do the analysis. Well, now you've got a franchise that's going to go in there for you. If you have to get a retail establishment, so if you're looking at a brick and mortar one where you got to have A+ real estate, you've got a whole team of people that are going to go look for the best real estate, do the lease negotiation for you, have the plan for the build out. All you do is pay for it on that. So
Yeah.
they've just really enjoyed the fact that that franchise is there to do most of the work that they weren't experts at necessarily, weren't the best at on that. So they could concentrate on what they were good at, which is running that business.
Absolutely. And what's the major difference between a skilled and non-skilled? Like what would a skilled employee be considered? Like maybe
Skilled
some
employee.
examples.
Yeah, great question, Jordan. Sorry for interrupting. The skilled employees. So if you're looking at, say, a plumbing franchise, you're more than likely going to need a master plumber for that, and then other plumbers for it. Though it's a more skilled employee. If you're looking at something like a Meineke or an Amco, or you're looking at working on cars, a mechanic, those are more skilled employees. So those might be a little bit more challenging to find. But once you get them, you don't get that turnover. The non-skilled
Yeah.
employees are going to be the ones like I was when I was working at Taco Bell when I first got
Yeah.
started on that. your non-skilled employees don't necessarily have a skill, easily trained. It's easy to find them, but you have a tendency to have a lot of turnover there just because of the nature of the business itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you think about your transition and your process, because I was sitting there thinking about it, I'm like, you went remote significantly earlier than majority of the world. When I feel like the world that kind of came in the last 3 years, you've been, sounds like, remote for the past like 20 years, between the Schoolie Mitchell and the franchise consultant. What was that transition like? And slash, were your friends being like, what are you doing? Like, how are you? What was that transition like for you?
That transition, Jordan, was a big challenge at first. So corporate world, you go to a desk, you got to show up at 7 o'clock. You go up at 5. You got everything right there in front of you. So there's no distractions. Pretty much, you're just right there working. Now switch over to that where I decided I didn't want a business where I had to go into that business, where I had to drive to that business. I wanted to do it from home. Boy, I tell you, there is a lot of distractions at home when you first get started. So when I first got started with Schoolie Mitchell, I'd sit down, and I get up early, so I was down there sitting at my desk, at 8 o'clock or so, doing that, and things would come up. The dogs needed to go for a walk. The house needed to be cleaned. Uh, and I was, then I'd sit down for lunch and I'd say, okay, let's take a look and see what I did throughout the day so far. So I worked on the business for half an hour between,
Yeah.
8 and noon. I'm like, okay, we got to change something here. This isn't going to work because you're at home, you usually do things around the house. So working from home is not necessarily for everybody. But what I had to do was then put down a planned schedule for myself. I had to write out my schedule. This is what I'm going to do at this time. This is what I'm going to do at this time. And I had to go by that schedule so I wouldn't be distracted by everything else. So that part was a learning curve to really get it. It probably took a good couple months for me to really get that schedule down. And now I've got it down pat. But my friends thought I was crazy. My dad thought I was crazy. He said, you got an engineering degree. Why would you need to do anything else? Just, keep a job as an engineer and go with that. But it actually turned out pretty good. It's just that you're right, Jordan, that transition from sitting in that office, sitting in that cubicle as an engineer, and then going to have to discipline yourself to write down a schedule, follow that plan, follow that schedule. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this many business people. I'm going to put these ads out. I'm going to work on this, so on and so forth, and follow that. And then an hour for lunch. And then after a while, it just comes natural. It's just start flowing. I did everything to begin with. And then as I did everything to begin with, I found that there was a lot of things I was spending time on that I didn't need to spend time on because I wasn't necessarily the best person at it and it wasn't the best use of my time. So at that point in time, after I learned how to do everything, I started portioning out different sections of it. So my best time is spent talking with people one-on-one, whether it was the Schoolie Mitchell or whether it was the franchise consulting, is getting on the phone or going to those businesses and talking with them. All the other things that were involved in that business, even though I did them to begin with, I found people who enjoyed doing those sort of things, working on the websites, making the phone calls, setting the appointments. There's a lot of people out there that just enjoy that. I did not. I wasn't the best at it. So I portioned those out to other people so that I could spend the time where I was best at, where I made the most money at. It worked out, but it does take a little while, especially when you're doing it from home, to really get that schedule down. But you got to be disciplined, write everything down, what you're going to do, have a schedule throughout the day of what you're going to do.
Yeah. And at what age did you end up starting your own, like starting the Schoolie Mitchell and going off on your own? Because I want to
Yep.
give people at 50 years old.
Yep. My goal.
Well, I just say that because it gives everyone so many, like, there's no limitations. We can be whoever we want to be, and we can create that life whenever we want to create it. So that's one of the things that really inspires me about you, Greg, is that you went out there and created the life you wanted to create. Because there's so many of us that live in this fear of, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can never work from home. I can never do this. And it's like these are all limitations that we place on ourselves. And you're an example of someone who's proved that. And you were in our first call, you were telling me about your day. You're like, I walk the dogs, I got my calls for a few hours, I do some other stuff, I work another few hours. But like, it's the ability to have the routine that you want to create. And it's not this bound, I have to be in my chair for 10 hours a day, I have to skip birthdays. It's no, there's lives out here that we can create through this franchising. Now, with the franchising, how much are people, how does the income on that work? Like, are people actually making money? Like, how does that really work? Because I know there's so many different options and there's so many different ways of going about it. So how do you think about that? And then another thing that we'll dive into is how active is it? How passive is it? How is there semi-active? Because you talked about that a little bit too. But let's start off first with what is the earning potential of like one of these franchises?
Great question, Jordan. So when franchises first started out many, many years ago, there was, of course, some nefarious players in there on that. Uh, as it turns out with most industries, where they said, if you buy this franchise, invest in this franchise, you're going to make this amount of money. And as it turned out, not everybody did. Lawsuits happened. Federal Trade Commission steps in, says if you do not collect the data for how much people are making, you cannot tell anybody how much people are making. Okay, so specifically for a franchise, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how much can I make at this franchise? Okay, can't really specifically tell you that. However, what the franchises are going to do, and it doesn't matter whether you get into the brick and mortar franchise, whether you get into the service industry franchise on that, they're just different types of business. You could still make a good solid amount of money. Most of those franchises are looking for you to replace that corporate income. So they're looking for you to bring in a good six-figure income. The services industry, where you're looking at an investment around $150,000 or so, they're going to, it's going to be territory size based on demographics. So if you're looking at something in the home improvement, they're going to be looking for homeowners that have income levels of 100,000 or more, and they're going to be looking at a couple of 100,000 people for that, because they want you to get into that six-figure income range. Senior care industry, same thing. They'll give you about 30,000 seniors, something like that with the senior care industry in general. You bring in, so they give you 30,000 as your territory size. You bring in, say, 50 seniors into your business. You're probably bringing in about $1 million top end revenue, and you're probably dropping about 20%, a couple 100,000 to the bottom line on that one.
Wow.
On there. So it is a good business. The brick and mortar businesses are a little bit different on that. Their territory radius is generally miles because people only drive so far to do it. But it's the same thing with those. They're still going to give you a large enough territory size to where you can bring in a six-figure income. And that goes with, if you want to turn your business into a franchise as well, it's easier to get clients in if you are making net figures of 100,000 or more, because you get more people that are attracted to you. Now, there's some businesses that don't. Some of the hair salon businesses, they bring in less than that, but they're simple to operate, and people generally get into more than one of them if you're going to do that. But with the services industry, there are still some of those that don't necessarily bring in 100,000, but they're pretty close to those. You just need more than one territory for some of those on that one. So I can steer, I can't tell people how much they can make, but I can kind of steer people towards what I know, or that I got an idea of what you're going to hear from the franchisees. So when people tell me what they're looking to do, I can kind of steer them towards the franchise, where I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to hear on that. So we'll have a pretty good idea of what you want to make. But it's all really good business. It just depends on how much you want to put into it. Same with me. If I want more, then just put in a little bit more effort into it, put a little more marketing into it, and you get some more money. If you're good with 3-4 hours a day like I am, then maybe you don't do all that work and you just spend more time like I do. Take dogs for a walk in the morning and work for a few hours, bring in enough money to where you're satisfied and you're happy. It's a lot of freedom with the franchise doing that.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing is you go, okay, to get in, it might be $150,000, right? Some people might go, what? How does someone even have that? How does that even work? But as we talked about in the beginning, there's loan programs. So how much would these people loan? Would they loan up the entire amount, or how would that work? Or is
Well,
there a
if you,
percentage,
yeah,
or just
Great question, Jordan. If we stick with just the SBA loans and just look at those, then if you're looking at the service industry, for instance, they're around $150,000, give or take. You're looking at an express loan, SBA express loan. So you put in about I think it's about 20,000, I think it's 19.5 or something like that. Put in about 20,000 down for it. Then the SBA, you get a loan through them. And we have loan people again that will do that for you within about 3 or 4 weeks. They'll drop $150,000 into your business account, and then you just pay yourself back out from there on that one. When you're getting into a brick and mortar type business, you generally, if you go the SBA route, it's going to be a 7A loan. That one's going to be a little bit more. You generally put around 20% down on that, and then they divvy it out as you're doing the build out. But there's other loans that are available as well. You know, doing a rollover for business with your 401k or your IRA, you can do that as well. But it's easy to do. You got a lot of different options. And the difference between the 401k and the SBA and the conventional loans is if you want to use other people's money or if you want to use your own money. So I use my own money. I did the 401k rollover because I don't like personally going into debt, but a lot of my investors actually prefer to use other people's money as long as the investment services the debt. They're okay with it because then they can grow and expand as much as they want to, which is good. But we have many different loan people that get into they do franchising. So that part's relatively simple. And they put most of it, again, 20,000 for an express loan, for service industry is about right. And then probably about 20,000 for something that requires, 20% for something that requires more of a build out on that.
Yeah, because the thing I find fascinating about this is if you sit there and think about it, $150,000, maybe you could buy a house in the Midwest, rent it out, and you'll make a couple $100 a month, right? Or there's this opportunity where it's similar, if not better terms, depending on the house payment. And then you can make upwards of 6 figure. It's just the cash on cash return is significantly greater than a standard real estate investment, which I find pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's nice. You know, the getting a rental property is all well and good, but I had a couple of those, and there was a few challenges involved in those as well. You know, getting the renters and keeping it up on that and keeping it up on the maintenance on those. But if you want, I would say, yeah, business definitely runs a little bit differently, but it's definitely was a greater return my business was than my rental properties.
And the other cool thing is that as people retire, and I don't know about this, but from what I'm seeing is like some people are retiring. Like that whole conventional, you're going to retire at 65 and then never work another day in your life is like, it's true for some people, but most people you'll find another way to make money, whether sometimes they work like a regular job or sometimes they find different businesses to get into that produce that income. And I know that can be very difficult for a lot of people who have never earned a dollar outside of their normal job. So how do you handle those people? Because it might be like, I want to retire, but I want to make sure I'm also producing income. You know what I mean? It can be a little bit stressful.
Most of the people that are like 65 and older come to me don't or want to retire from the corporate world, but they don't have something to do on the side. They don't have a hobby, so they get bored. They said, "I just want to do something. I want to have some fun. I want to make a little extra money, to have it, something like that." And they've got experience. I mean, by the time you hit 65, you experience doing all sorts of different things. And there's many different things that we can get people into at that age. But most of the people that come to me when they're that age are just they they don't want to stop going out and doing something. They enjoy
Yeah.
just doing things. A lot of them just enjoy running a business or running an organization, and they just want to
Yeah.
keep doing that. They don't necessarily want to do it 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. So then that's when we look at things that are semi-passive, 10 to 15
Yeah.
hours a week. So now you've got, a little something to do on the side so that you're not bored. But you've got a lot of experience by the time you hit that age on there. So there's a lot of different things that we can get you into.
Yeah, and I think that's super good to do because there was this study done saying that when people retire, I think it's like 6 years after, whenever they stop working, they likely like pass. And it's due to this fact of not keeping your mind going. So this idea that you can do a franchise, kind of be in and out of it, and have your team running it, it it's a really positive thing for a lot of people because a lot of people don't even know about this opportunity.
Yeah, I've had them as much as 80 years old come to me and say that they're looking forward. My age range has been extended out in both directions here in the past few years. It used to be like 45 to 65. Now it's like 25 to 80 on that one that I've had various people come to me looking for franchises. But yeah, like we were talking about, they just keeping your mind active is probably the number one thing. The ultimate goal down there is just that they don't want to sit around. They're not golfers. They don't want to sit out there and play golf all day long. They don't have any other hobbies. They just really enjoy doing that for a limited amount of time throughout the day to keep them thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And you produce more income. So what
Yeah.
are some of the different businesses that might be like a passive business? What would some of those be? And how passive are we really talking here?
So passive, what we define as passive or semi-passive is generally 10 to 15 hours a week. There are 4 franchises that we can do almost completely passive, that they have a team of people doing it for you. That's foam insulation, pet grooming, pet care, and redoing doors, reconditioning doors on those. So those 4 from one of our companies has a team of people that will run the business for you on that, which means that you don't necessarily need to, have the business in your city. You can have it anywhere you want since you got another team doing it for you.
So the pet grooming one, let's use that one for example. How
Okay.
would that work?
So that's a mobile pet grooming on that one. So what you would do with that, you would just have a team do it. Now you can either hire the manager yourself with the franchises help and do it semi-passive and have it in your area, or if you want to do completely passive, then they'll have a management team that'll run it for you. So they'll create that business, they'll get that van, they'll hire the people for you, and what they do is they just go out and then they do the advertising and marketing, and then you have a van or two that services your territory, and you go out to people's homes so that they don't have to load up their dogs.
Yes,
Not too sure
I've
about their
seen
cats,
these.
but they don't have to load up their dogs, take them down to their groomers, drop them off, do what they're going to do, come back and get them. Now you just go straight to their home, get all the grooming done right then. Bam, one less thing for the homeowner to do. They love it.
Ease of use. It's basically like the Uber for
Yeah.
the. So how would that work? Do you know the numbers on that one? Like, what would something like that look like? I just want the audience to understand what are some of the potential options. Obviously,
Gotcha.
everything's too defined to whatever the person's goals are, but I was just curious about this one.
So you're probably looking at, if you do one territory with them, you're probably looking at probably 150 to $200,000, depending on what the van costs are, because you just want to then get the van done. The franchise fee for any franchise, for almost any franchise in the U.S., it's going to be around $50,000 one-time franchise fee to get you trained and get you everything you need to know about running the business. One-time fee. Total investment is what really comes into play here. So the total investment, including the franchise fee, between about 150 and 200,000 is what you're going to be looking for there. And that's going to take care of, you're getting somebody hired and trained, you're getting the van or van wrapped with that, the necessary equipment for all the dog grooming, and then all the advertising, marketing, and all that, including the franchise fee is what you're looking for there on that. And if you get more than one territory, then it's going to go up. The total investment will go up a little bit, but they generally give a discount on the territory fees as you go up. So where the franchise fee for one territory may be 50,000, for 2 territories, then it may be 65,000 altogether. So only another 50.
Oh, okay.
It's going to vary a little bit, but generally it's going to be less than the original. So the franchise fee is basically for the territory and for all the training.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into more
You can just add
territories,
them in.
you just add them in, and it's at a discounted rate depending on how many you get.
Interesting. Very interesting. Because there's a lot of this that people are not even exposed to, which I think is why it's so important what you're doing. Because a lot of this is completely missed. So for you, being someone that was so valued education and still does value education, but valued the conventional education, What's the education been like post starting your own businesses, starting your own franchises? Because I know you mentioned that you got the college degree, the master's, the engineer, like a lot of education. What was that transition like for you? Because you seem like a lifelong learner, who's someone who's open to new experiences and new ideas.
Well, yeah. Well, when I first got into it, that was the one thing I probably haven't mentioned yet, Jordan, is the education on that. So I was a restaurant manager for 15 years, and then I went to school, got my degree in electrical engineering and physics, then was an engineer for 15 years, got my degree in master's degree in business. Um, and then I went on after being an engineer and trying to be a School of Mitchell telecommunications consultant, which required selling. So being an engineer, when I first started off, that was one of the challenges of starting that business, is that, we had a presentation that we give on people to let them know what we could do to help them with their telecommunications needs. And people would tell me, when I showed them the information, they'd tell me no. So I said, well, cool. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. See you later. Dennis would just get all over me. He said, they're always going to tell you no, Greg. What you're doing them as a service, you're helping them out, but they're always going to tell you no because they don't want to change. It's not broke. Why fix it? You've got to show them how you're going to be an integral part of their system. So the thing I need to do is not only get my education through Dennis and through his mentor that he gave me to help me out, but then I got some other books on selling, on that, and how to sell. So I extended my education with every sales book I could get on that,
Oh,
learning
really?
how to, yeah. So back on my shelf, I don't think you can see it, but the bottom two shelves are all covered with books, and those are all books on different kind of selling books on
Yeah.
that. Who is that guy? I can't remember right off the top of my head, but sales is something you do with people, not to people, is a general
Yeah.
theme. So I look for the people that were more, probably a little bit more oriented towards helping people, not trying to sell ice to Eskimos, but just helping people um, with their lives and making their lives and improving their lives better. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. Is the basic thing. Who was that guy? It's going to come to me eventually here on that one of my great books, but he was good on that. And so that's what my education has been, as far as being able to get in front of people and show them, educate them. So it's, I think the sales books I read is more about how to educate people on what it is that you have and how it can help them, and not necessarily try to sell them like, okay, it's going out of sale, it's a certain price and it's going to go soon. So we'll get it quickly. We're not going to manufacture any more of these, like you hear on TV these days, manufacturing is ended. Get it now before manufacturing. None of that kind of sales. It's all education, how to help people understand what you do and how to help them understand how you can help them on that. The other part of my education then, since I'm into franchising, is of course learning about all the different franchises. So we have many different franchises, about 500 franchises in our group.
Oh,
And
wow.
they have a lot of webinars that we intend to. So I attend their webinars where they show us, teach us, tell us about their business, how that works. And then I go out and visit with a lot of them as well. So I'll go out and visit with them at their headquarters. I'll go through what my clients will go through when we have what they call a discovery day, which is learning about the business, the franchise business itself at their offices, and what their training facility looks like. So I'll educate myself about that, how the different industries are looking, where things are going in the franchising world. So it's always a continuing education with learning about the different franchises, how they work. And to some extent, I try to learn some about, like we were talking about, the funding and that sort of thing. Not my area of expertise, and not something I necessarily go into real in depth on that. That's why I have great people that do have that in-depth knowledge, franchise attorneys that have that knowledge. So I'll know a little bit about the franchise law. I'll know a little bit about the fundings and the funding aspects, but I won't go into too terribly in depth into those. My education is more on the franchises themselves and how they work, and how well their franchisees like them, and how well they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty interesting learning about, like, for me, it's something that I always look for is trying to find a holistic perspective, right? So it's how do you see something from all the different angles? So you have a guy here, Greg, who's traveling, not just listening to a webinar, but traveling to all of these different businesses, seeing what they're doing, learning about what they're doing, so that by the time you go and speak with him, it's a, hey, I already have 30 businesses that I'm thinking about that could work with you. It eases the process. So how does that process work with someone working with you? Because when we originally spoke, when people come on the podcast, one of my concerns is always like, please don't sell. Like, please don't sell too hard or even try to, because people can feel it. When in reality, a podcast is a value-based transaction with the listener, where the listener goes, wow, that guy Greg taught me a lot about franchising. That was really interesting. Thank you, Jordan, for hosting something of that regard. Which, when you came on and you said you're like, Jordan, education only, I'm like, Greg is my guy. Greg is my guy. So, how does someone learn about the franchising if they want to get in touch with you? What does that process look like? Because I don't want someone to be intimidated by the, oh my God, it's $150,000. I don't know. Wait, I don't want to waste Greg's time. I don't, yeah.
Great question, Jordan. So I get that. I don't want to waste your time. I get that sometimes. No worries. Okay. So I got 4 people that I introduced to franchises. Okay. One person will invest in a franchise. Absolutely normal. I'm actually one of the top 1% in there in that. And still, 3 out of 4 people will not invest in a franchise. That's fine. I'm here to educate you on franchising. As I indicated earlier, franchising is not necessarily the greatest thing since sliced bread to everybody, and it may not be to you. Only way to find out is to look into it, investigate it. We'll investigate it together. I'll be with you every step of the way. You can get a hold of me at franchisemaven.com. That's franchise, MAV as in Victor, EN.com. There's a link in there to my book. Pick up my book. Send me your, oh, by the way, it's a Wall Street Journal bestseller book. How the heck that happened, I don't know. So many people loved it. That'll be this process that I'll walk you through with real life stories of people that I've worked with. So you can get started with that. Get to know me. You can get my PDF version just right off my website. I think you just click on that and I'll shoot you over a PDF version on that. If you want a hard copy, there's a link in there too for more information. Just give me your address and I'll send you a hard copy of that. You can also schedule a time with me on that. You can pick up the phone and give me a call at 361-772-6401. As you can tell, where Jordan had to kind of cut me off there a few times because I get really into it, that I will talk your ear off, but I will answer any questions you have. It is all about education on my part. I'm not here to try and convince you of anything. As indicated, 3 out of 4 people that I introduced to a franchise will not even get into it because it's just not the right time. They just don't want to write the check. It just doesn't feel good. So don't worry about wasting my time. I love talking about it.
And I want to thank you for coming on. And I also want to leave everyone, the audience, with that mindset of how Greg's handling it. The way Greg handles it is, I know that people are going to say no late in the process and my time's going to be utilized, but I want to get the reps. And I feel like too many of us are like, my time's not worth it. My time's not, it's not about your time. It's about you getting more reps and you getting better at understanding the process. And when you're in that place, it doesn't come off as desperate, but it comes off as an understanding. And it's not that the door is closed, but the door might open on later down the line. Who knows? And I just want to share that with everyone because that's a very good sales tip for anyone listening if they want to have a takeaway of, oh, maybe that's a way I could approach my business a little bit better. So, Greg, I will put all that information in the show notes. I really appreciate the time. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Jordan, it was an honor being here. I appreciate you having me, sir.